Joining me right now is Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, co-sponsor of the Caesar bill in the House. Thank you for being here, Congressman.
You bet. You bet.
What does today mean?
You know, it's huge. This is, as I was listening to the story, I got a little choked up because, back when Caesar came in front of our committee and we saw these pictures of torture, and literally, it was reminiscent of Nazi Germany, and both in terms of how they documented it and just the cold-heartedness with it. And if you'd have told me that this wouldn't get passed till 2019, I'd look and I'd say, well, that's going to be entirely too late. The problem is the Civil War is still going on. These atrocities are still going on, so better late than never. And this sends a very strong message that Congress is watching, that the United States is watching, and that with all the mistakes that we've made in Syria, straddling both administrations, frankly, we are now taking a step forward to say that war crimes still have no place in this world. And I'll tell you, they're shuddering in the halls of in Syria for this right now.
And look, Congressman, there were years when there were very few of us paying attention to this. You are one of them. You met with Caesar when he comes to Washington. You've pushed for this passage. What do you think it was that finally pushed this over the line?
I think it's persistent. And Kate, I want to say to you and your viewers, you and S.E. Cupp, for instance, are two of the most of the folks on TV that would not let us forget about this story. You get a lot of credit, too, because, it's easy to, with the news of the day, to glaze over these stories, to not talk about them. People lose interest. But these are real human lives. At a time when we sit around and we say, oh, the worst thing that's ever existed is the fact that the other party exists, right? Yeah. And you think about that really on the other side of this world, there are children that are being targeted by Russian jets, by Syrian jets, by Iranian ground troops. It is a tragedy. So the fact that it finally went through, I think, is a testament to persistence. And it's also a testament to just how purely evil the Assad regime is, that it is still relevant basically 6 years after the first testimony.
And to you as well, Congressman. Thank you very much. And as you mentioned, though, sadly, the atrocities in Syria are not ending. I mean, the announcement by the president to pull U.S. troops back from northern Syria, it added another new level of kind of chaos, according to most, everyone involved. So what does this Caesar bill do in this moment? It was important 6 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when the House passed it 3 times, just to remind everybody. But what does it mean today?
So, yes, it would have been better to get it done earlier. I think it shows that the United States Congress and, frankly, the administration for signing it into law is not forgetting Syria, especially on the human rights side. There's really 2 issues. There's the geopolitical question, what do we do in Syria? And that's a whole nother discussion. But then there's just the human tragedy thing. And that's, people that are against intervention or for intervention in Syria can all agree that we shouldn't stand against, prosecuting human rights. Unfortunately, one U.S. senator did for years, and that's why it's just getting signed. But we finally have taken a stand. I'll tell you, if you're Assad right now, or you're one of his supporters, or you're Russia and you're, Wagner group, the mercenary group upholding Assad in Syria, you're going to be pretty nervous, because if we implement these right, it's going to have a major impact and cost, and we're going to shame you and we're going to hunt you down.
Let me ask you, you mentioned Russia. This week, we learned another sanctions bill against Russia is getting pushback from the White House. This is one that's introduced by Lindsey Graham, and it's in response to Russian interference in the election. It has bipartisan support, as Russian sanctions bills do. The White House says it's opposing it. Do you wonder why the presidency is opposing holding Russia accountable? It's like a different side of the same coin.
Yeah, look, I've been extremely critical of it. I've looked at it and said, I don't know why. Maybe, they can make arguments that we have enough sanctions or whatever. The reality is we have to stand up to defend our election system. We have to stand up to defend the integrity of democracy. The fact that we can all yell at each other because, oh my gosh, you're a Republican, or oh man, you're a Democrat, we have to be able to preserve that, because that's what democracy is. But it's also our biggest weakness if somebody wants to try to exploit that. So I think the administration should be on board. It's not delegitimizing President Trump's election, but it's saying going forward, there can be no involvement by Russia. Obviously, in an open society, they're always going to try, and there's going to be a penalty. So I would call on, outside of if it's a technical, there's been a few times where there's technical issues and that gets turned into something else. But let's do anything we can to defend our election system. And I'm on board. I've always been on board, and we need to continue to push for that.
And when it comes to the Caesar bill, look, as you mentioned, the country's divided. But this is one thing that the country can count as a bipartisan win. And honestly, that is something worth paying attention to, even when we're talking about a conflict that's gone on so long in Syria. Thank you for your work on it.
You bet. Hey, thank you for yours. God bless you, and happy holidays.
You too. Thank you, Congressman. We'll be right back.